Hi, hello, good afternoon, good evening, maybe good morning. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. My name is Laura. Welcome to the session. If we haven't met before, I'm very pleased to meet you. If we have met before, I'm very pleased that you're back again. It's good to hear. We've got a busy hour, so let's get going straight away with what is on the menu for this afternoon. It's going to be good. So we're going to be looking at this. Let's make this nice and big for you. Okay. So we're going to be looking again at ways of improving your writing. And we're going to be doing it within quite specific parameters. We're looking at how to move from a band 6, which is a level that students often do get stuck at, to move up to the highest of the high, to a band 9. Now, we will be refreshing our awareness of what a band 6 is, what a band 9 is in terms of the marking criteria. We will also be looking as well at 2 essays, one of which is a fairly typical example of one which is a band 6, and then moving up to see what makes an essay so good that an examiner decides it's awarding it the very highest of grades, a band 9. So this is the essay question that we're going to be focusing on today. I'll read it for you. Some people believe that visitors to other countries should follow local customs and behaviour. Others disagree and think that the host country should welcome cultural differences. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. Okay, so this is a fairly typical broad IELTS question, isn't it? People take this exam all over the world, from Toronto to Timbuktu. So the questions that you're going to get asked about, they're quite limited in a way, because the subject matter has to be so general that everyone can find something to write about it. And local customs and culture is a really typical example of that, because everyone should be able to have some experience, even if not necessarily of traveling abroad, but welcoming visitors from other countries. Okay, so this is what we are going to be focusing on. Now, as I have said to you many times before, we need to put ourselves in the situation of the examiners. Okay, so you need to not be thinking like a student. You need to be thinking in the same mindset as the people that are going to be grading you. Okay, so they are very strict guidelines. It's very strict what is necessitated to get each band. And that's good. Well, first of all, it's good because it's fair, but also it's good from a point of view of study and learning, because they tell you exactly what you've got to do, and they also tell you what you've not got to do as well. And that's definitely an advantage of taking the IELTS exam. So let's have a look at this lovely document. It should be, if you've been here before, it should be familiar to you, but it's really, really important that you are absolutely familiar with the layout of this, because this is not only what the examiners will mark you from, but it's something that you very, very much need to be aware of what you need to do to break through the certain thresholds. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Okay, I'll make this big because there's a lot of information here. So let's have a look. All right, so these are the band 2 writing descriptors. Now we are focusing on essays. To be honest with you, the marking criteria for part 1, it's not really that dissimilar. The requirements are still the same. The language points are pretty similar. There's not that much difference between them, to be honest with you. But do have a look at these in your own time. They are available on the IELTS official website, and it's very, very important that you know if you do have a specific band that you need to get, what you need to do to get it. And it's always worth as well looking at the next band up. You know, don't limit yourself by looking at what you need to get. Go as high as you can. Okay, so the two bands that we're focusing on are band 6 and band 9. But of course, what's happening at band 7 and band 8 is going to be important as well. So down the side here, we have got the numerical bands going from 9 to 8 to 7 to 6. The reason that band 6 has been chosen is because this is a level where students seem to get stuck. Now, it's not that IELTS examiners think, okay, we're going to limit this person by making them not get higher than a 6. That's not the case at all. It's just that, you know, band 6 is still very good. It is a high upper intermediate level of English. It's not that far off of being advanced. You know, it's one level below being an advanced level of English. So when we look at the sample essay, you'll probably be thinking it's not that bad. And it isn't that bad, because if it was that bad, it would be much lower down than a 6. Okay? So it doesn't matter what band requirements you're aiming for. The way that you're marked is always the same. So as you'll see, going from left to right, there are 4 different areas that you will be assessed on. Now, the first one is task response. So to put this very basically, it is, have you answered the question? Have you answered all parts of the question? And have you expanded on all parts of the question as well? You'll see when we look at the band 6 offering that this doesn't always happen. Okay, so it's very, very important. You need to show that you've understood exactly what you've been asked to do, not gone off in a direction where you think you understand what you were meant to do, but you're not too sure, but you're going to write 250 words anyway. That's absolutely not what you should do. And that's what a lot of students do. So it basically means, have you understood your instructions and have you followed them through? So for band 6, let's get green here. Band 6 basically means that all parts of the task have been mentioned at some point. So the person has kind of understood what they've been asked to do. It's just that they haven't been very balanced in making sure that all of the parts of the question were answered with the same amount of attention, basically. I'm going to highlight these words here. Unclear or repetitive. Okay, that's very important. Don't do that. Okay, we'll see in the sample essay that the student did, and that's probably why they got stuck at a 6. Well, one of the reasons why, anyhow. Now, presents main ideas, okay, but some may be inadequately developed or unclear. So they've got good ideas, they just haven't really written about them broadly enough. They haven't included enough information. It's like somebody having a good idea but not being able to explain it. Of course, ideas are important, but ideas without supporting examples and reasons are quite empty. So we need to make sure that you are not saying something which is kind of connected to the question, but not really. The examiner doesn't want to have to think that hard. Okay, you are given very, very clear questions. Answer them. Okay, so that's the first part. And task response, the reason that it is the first in this table is because it is linked to the other 3. They are all interconnected. So the second part here, coherence and cohesion. If you've been with my sessions before, you know this is something that we're very keen to talk about because it's 25% of your mark and it's undertaught. Teachers don't really bother with this, and I honestly, I have no idea why. Well, I do because it's difficult, but there is no reason that equal attention should not be paid to coherence as cohesion as your lexical resource, which is your vocabulary usage, and grammar. Now, if you had an IELTS class and they didn't mention anything about grammar, you probably think that was something seriously going wrong, quite rightly. But it's not all about vocabulary and grammar. The way that you structure your information, the way that you process the arguments, it's really important. It's 25% of your mark. So let's have a quick look at what they're looking for with a well-structured, organized, and ordered answer. Again, please remember that a 6 is not bad, okay? We get stuck with thinking it's 6 out of 10. It's not. A 6 is still a very good mark, which is why they are demanding a lot of you to get this grade. So you've arranged the information coherently, and there's an overall progression. So you are writing with purpose and with direction. You've used linking expressions, which is good, but it's not particularly accurate. It helps a bit, but it doesn't help as much as it should. Paragraphs are used. You have to be using paragraphs. If you don't, you'll be at a level 5. But the use of paragraphs is not always logical. Moving over to vocabulary, it's adequate. It means it's okay. There are some mistakes though, which is why it's a 6. And it's the same with grammar. There's a mixture of simple and complex sentences. So there's a lot of grammar that's there. But again, there's errors with grammar and with punctuation. Obviously, mistakes aren't good. But they don't really stop your message from being clearly understood. But of course, they shouldn't be there. We'll talk a little bit more about accuracy later on. Okay, so we've got a fairly good idea now of what a Band 6 essay should include. So let's have a look at an attempt at a Band 6 essay. Okay. Okay. So let's remind ourselves of the question. I'm going to make it big again. Let's just remind ourselves of the question here. Some people believe that visitors to other countries should follow local customs and behaviour. Others disagree and think that the host country should welcome cultural differences. Discuss both of these views and give your opinion. There's a lot going on here, isn't there? And I want to state again, it's just so important that you really realize that you can't do anything. You shouldn't even think about starting writing until you have absolutely processed what it is that you've been asked to write about. Okay? I mean, yes, this is in connection to planning as well, but actually you've got to understand what the statement is before you can really do anything. So the first thing that we're going to do is break down the question, and then we're going to look and see what the main points of the essay are, what the irrelevant or unnecessary points of the essay are, and really importantly, has the question been answered? Okay, so let's start here. Now, sometimes they do put quite complex language into the statements and to the questions. That's, you know, it's kind of to be expected. Part of the challenge of writing is recognizing what you've been asked to write about. So let's get some colors going here. So some people believe that visitors to other countries should follow local customs and behaviour. Right, so that's kind of the first point. Okay, so people think that when people visit for a whole raft of reasons, visit countries for work, well, not now at the moment, for work, for pleasure, to visit family. It doesn't specify why you're visiting the country. It's just talking about people who move from their own country somewhere else for a whole variety of reasons. Okay, so understood this part. Great. Okay. Others disagree. Okay. And think that the host country should welcome cultural differences. Okay. So that actually is not too complex a pair of opinions, is it? So the first one, some people think that visitors should, and then in blue, the second point of view is that actually the responsibility is on the host country. Okay. Discuss both of these views and give your opinion. Now, this is important as well, because yes, of course, understanding the statement that you've been given to write about is important, but you also need to be aware of what type of essay you've been requested to do. So here, it's a discussion essay about opinions. And it says very clearly, doesn't it? Discuss both of these views and then provide your own opinion as well. Now, I know when we're sat in a relaxed situation at home watching a Facebook class, you're thinking, well, why is she highlighting that in pink? Because I know I can read that. Well, very good. You can do that now. Great. But in an exam, your brain isn't working exactly as it should be. Not just you, it's just anyone's, mine included. You're stressed. And it's very, very easy to make pretty silly mistakes, to be honest with you, in exams. And to focus on the statement, have that absolutely clear, brilliant, but then lose a lot of marks because you have written maybe an essay which is about disadvantages and advantages, when actually you've been asked to write an opinion essay. Okay, so just make sure that you don't forget to find out, because it's very clear. Don't forget to focus on what style of essay, what type of essay you have been requested to write, because if you get that wrong, it's quite difficult to rescue. Now, in some exams, not so much recently, the IELTS examiner would state that you need to give relevant examples and experiences to support your essay. What they've been doing recently is actually not including this in the question, but they are still very much expecting you to provide relevant experiences and examples to support your ideas and opinions. Okay, so if you've been looking at perhaps some older exam books, which is great, or looking at other stuff online, you might think, okay, so now, for example, here, we're not being asked to give our opinions or examples. That's true. You're not being specifically asked to, but you still need to. I honestly have no idea why they don't write this anymore, but it is very much still expected, and it is still within the marking guidelines that students need to do that. So please do remember to use really clear, connected, relevant examples. Okay. So we've understood the question. Amazing. We've understood the type of essay that the question is going to be formed around. Brill. So let's now have a look at the body of text itself. So I will read this to you. Now, you might think that my powers of English have suddenly gone. They haven't. There are some little mistakes within the essay. Remember, it's a level 6 essay, so they're not really huge mistakes, but there are some inaccuracies here and there, and that's because I want to give you a real good example of what a band 6 essay looks like. And of course, it's not perfect, because if it was perfect, it would be a band 9. Okay. So many people travel these days, and there are positive and negative points to it. There are problems with air travel and pollution, and some people think the positives and negatives are a big problem. One advantage is that we can learn new language when we arrive in the new country. This is very exciting and useful, I think, too. People in the country where you travel can improve their languages by speaking to the visitors. This is good, I think. It is very interesting to visit new countries, but it is very expensive. Countries like having the tourism. It is good for their economy. People in the country may complain that it's very busy when they have many tourists, but they like the money too. I think it is good when people learn the language a little when they visit a new place, as they are more polite and is helpful for all. Wearing clothes like the local people is also polite. It shows you know something about the country. People will be more kind to you. It does not change you being a tourist, but maybe it will change the way you are spoken to. When tourists visit my country, it is not a problem. We like the tourists. Will they look like us? Maybe yes. We do not mind so much as other countries, I think. We like to have people visit us from all places, and that they are happy to wear what they want. Okay. So remember, the word limit for a response is 250 words. And this is, let me double check, I think it's pretty much that. Oh, 1 second. I think it's about 249. Yeah, 249. So this is basically, let's get the pink off, as lovely as pink is. Yeah, this is fine. You can't be shorter than this, but also don't be much longer. I'd say don't write more than sort of 320 words, because it will just irritate an examiner. If you irritate an examiner, it's not going to make them really want to give you a very good mark. It's a subjective process, marking writing. Okay. All right. So before we analyze this answer, I just want to go back 1 second. I'm just going to move around a sec. Un momento. Let's just refresh ourselves with this very important document. I'm a bit obsessed with this document, and you should be as well. Because the reason I like it is because it's kind of honest. It's because it literally is what examiners have to tick. The examiners are examined. This sounds confusing. The examiners are examined. They're checked to make sure that they completely comply with this document. So it's really important that you know what it is as well. It's a very important document to the examiners, then it's a very important document to you. So let's have a look. At the green, unclear or repetitive. Some ideas may be inadequately developed, unclear. Some parts may be fully covered than others. It's progression, paragraphing not logical. It's the yellow put here. The vocabulary, moving over to lexical resource, is okay. A few problems. Grammar is okay. The big problems, to be honest with you, with a Band 6 essay are not grammar and vocabulary. If you're not great at producing vocabulary and grammar, you won't get to a 6. You'll be limited to a 5, okay? So the vocabulary and grammar is not so much a problem. How the vocabulary and grammar has actually been used is. So it's just not organized brilliantly, and the question has not been answered as well as it should be. All right, there we go. So let's have a very close look at this. Right, introductions. I will never stop talking about them. It's so important. They're the first impression that you give the examiner, okay? It's like going into a job interview and creating a really poor impression when you say hello. I don't know how you would do that. But even if the rest of your essay is absolutely brilliant, an examiner will still be thinking, but their introduction was not very good. Okay, so you've got to go in strong. When we look at the band 9 example, you'll see how to write a really, really impressive introduction. Okay, you've got to make an impact from the start. Now, the question is very, very specific. Therefore, the answer, the whole answer, especially the introduction, should reflect it in being as specific. Writing something like this is not specific, and it's not really connected to what you've been asked to do. Many people travel these days, and there are positive and negative points to it. Right. Now, it just shows in the first sentence, which is arguably the most important sentence of the whole piece, that the person hasn't understood the question. It is not a good way to start, okay? Rest assured, later we will look at a very good way of starting to this question, but let's look at the one that's not so great now. It's just too vague. The person has read the question, panicked a bit, and just thought, what can I write about? Well, this talks about visitors to other countries. I know, I'll talk about travel. It's just not focused enough, okay? And the rest of the paragraph, the introduction, it's not even really an introduction. It's certainly not an introduction to this question. There are problems with air travel and pollution, and some people think the positives and negatives are a big problem. What is that? What does that even communicate? I mean, that's just people, to be honest, that's just somebody talking about nothing, isn't it? That's just people just talking about, vaguely talking around a subject. It's not answering anything. It hasn't clarified. It's made nothing clear. It's just muddled it. It's just made it more confusing. And you don't want to make people more confused, because if they're confused, they're not going to think that you've written something which is very good. Okay, now pay attention to the pink sentence. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. I mean, you can't have a clearer instruction than that, can you? And then in the introduction, they've written positives and negatives. That's kind of okay. And then one advantage. It's not great. It's just not very logical. It's not going to impress an examiner. Trust me. So we have two things, two very clear opposing points of view that you need to discuss and then give your own opinion about. Some people believe that visitors to other countries should follow local customs. Right, very good. Now here, what are the main points of this essay? Okay, so going into the first paragraph, what they're going to say. We can learn a new language when we arrive in the new country. Okay. People in the country where you travel can improve the languages by speak to the visitors. This is good, I think. Right. So the reason this is a 6 is not because of this idea, because this idea is connected to the question. It's how should I put it? A cultural language exchange. This is kind of a valid point, they haven't referenced it clearly. They haven't referenced it at all. I don't know why I'm saying clearly. They haven't referenced it to the specific question they've been asked. It's a shame. It does explain why it's been given a 6, because it is a connected and relevant example. You know, it is something that language is kind of a part of answering this question, but they haven't attached it to an argument here. They've just said it's good, which is an opinion, but it's not connected well enough. Okay, this is a very level 6 problem, talking about something which is kind of connected, but you haven't made it clear enough why and how it's connected. Now, this sentence here, it's very interested to visit new countries, but it is expensive. This is not connected to language here. Okay, so this is not good to put these two ideas in the same paragraph. The basic rule is that a new paragraph should contain a new idea. So this is again why it's a level 6 for coherence and cohesion, because the paragraphing hasn't been used logically. Yes, they have used paragraphs. That's not in dispute, and they've generally used them okay. But this random sentences like this are not going to help. So remember, if you're making a new point, fine, but put it in a new paragraph. The secondary problem with doing this is not just to do with coherence and cohesion. It's actually connected to the task response. This, to me, very strongly suggests that the person writing this has not planned. They've not, excuse me, they've not really thought about what they are going to write and where. This is more like a conversation, isn't it? Yes, great, you can learn a new language, but it's quite expensive. I mean, in a conversation, this is fine. We do flow between ideas. But when we're writing a formal academic essay, it needs to be very clearly divided. It doesn't help the reader to follow what you are trying to say. You can't expect them to know what you're saying. You need to make it very clear. Okay, so remember, new paragraph, new idea. So far we have got cultural language exchange. We've got this one sentence here about it being very expensive, which is not helpful for this paragraph and just not helpful for the essay in general. Nothing in the question suggests that you need to write about how expensive or otherwise travel is. Okay, so countries like having tourism. Okay, it's good for their economy. People in the country may complain that it's very busy when they have many tourists, but they like the money too. Again, not connected, really. A bit more specific myself here, both to local economy. Okay, it's not really answering the question, is it? It could be used as a reason why host countries should welcome cultural difference. They could have referenced it to that, saying that perhaps people should be more tolerant because it's very good for the economy. But you can see in this way that it's been presented here, this idea is useless. But it could have been used to back up something which would be very valuable and a good point. But this is just a reason with no opinion which is connected to it. And here it goes on. I think it's good when people learn the language a little when they visit a new place, as they're more polite and is helpful for all. Well, that sentence shouldn't even be here, should it? I mean, that sentence really should be connected to this paragraph. So this is a really good example of how somebody is going between 1, 2, 3, ideas, and this one here is the first idea. It should be linked together. So this is poor paragraphing. Put all of your ideas in the same, or your connected ideas to one main idea in a new paragraph. Okay. Wearing clothes like the local people is also polite. Okay. So here it shows you know something about the country. People will be more kind to you. Okay, well, that's good, isn't it? So respect local fashion, lead to better relationship. Good. Well, that is a main point, and that's a main point which is good, which is why they got a 6 and not a 5, because it is actually a good point. People will be more kind to you. Does not change you being a tourist, but maybe it will change the way you're spoken to. Good. Okay, so this is not a perfect paragraph, but it's a paragraph about the same subject, which is helpful. And it's giving an opinion. Wearing clothes like the local people is also polite. It gives a reason. It shows you know something about the country. And then it gives an example as well. It does not change you being a tourist, but it will change the way you're spoken to. Now, you can see by reading this yourself, it just helps everything, doesn't it? It's just really well laid out. Opinion, reason, example. Now, the introduction wasn't really an introduction, and it certainly wasn't an introduction that's connected to these main paragraphs here. When your work is being marked, the examiners look for an introduction, and then they look for a conclusion that are reflections of each other. Now, in a moment, we will look at a good introduction and a way that a conclusion can mirror that. When we look at this paragraph now, just ask yourself, is this a conclusion to what has been written before? And does it have any connection to the introduction? Okay. When tourists visit my country, it's not a problem. We like tourists. Will they look at us? Maybe yes. We do not mind so much as other countries. So this is not really following on for anything here. Last sentence. We like to have people visit us from all places and that they are happy to wear what they want. So again, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because this is an example and it's a reason, but it hasn't been attached to any opinion. I mean, you've been asked very clearly to discuss both views and give your own opinion. And what the person's done here is they've basically just talked about justification for certain things, but they haven't really said why. It's quite odd. So the irrelevant points, well, it's difficult to say if this is a main point or an irrelevant point, isn't it? Because it's kind of, in a way, arguably, it's both. I'm going to be generous and say it's a main point, actually. So I'm going to say personal experience of successful tourist-host relations. Yeah. But it's not summarizing anything. It's not a conclusion. It's giving you information. Talking about fashion again, but it's not looking back at what's been written. Has the question been answered? Well, you can think about that, and if you think it has. For me personally, no, it hasn't. It's been written around It's not been answered. When I say written around, I mean it's like you saying to somebody, do you want this? And they say maybe. It's just like you're looking for a yes or a no. And this is kind of the same situation here. They haven't said anything. They've spent 250 words talking about connected issues, but they haven't discussed the ones that they were asked to. They haven't talked about, well, they did a bit that the host country should welcome differences, but it's just not been clearly. And I put yes, but mostly no. I'm not answering because it's contagious. I'm now not answering things directly. Yes, but mostly no. Relevant issues discussed, but not a clear answer formulated. That's what I would put in feedback to a student about this, okay? It's a waste of good ideas. The ideas are obviously good, otherwise they wouldn't have hit a 6, but it sounds like cricket. But it's not enough to talk about it, okay? I think it was generous to get a 6 for this. There are reasons why. I think the reasons why are more linguistic. I think it's because the grammar is good. I'd say that the grammar and some of the sentences are probably a 7, especially a sentence like this. It doesn't change you being a tourist, but maybe it'll change the way you're spoken to. This is good. Okay, it's not a disaster. The whole piece is not terrible because otherwise they wouldn't be getting the grades that they have. But it could be a lot better. Right, so let's go back to the magic IELTS document and have a look at a 9. A 9. 9s are like unicorns. They are almost mythical, but they do happen. Okay. So let's have a look. So very basically, what do you have to do to get a 9? It's probably easier to say what you don't have to do. Quite a lot is basically what you need to do. So the word fully is used a lot here, ironically, considering you shouldn't repeat for a level 9. Fully, everything is written about, fully developed, well-supported ideas, skillful paragraphing, cohesion is used in a way which is completely flowing, wide range of vocabulary, very natural and sophisticated lexical features, wide structure with full flexibility. Now you can see as well, and I think it's interesting, you are still allowed to make some slips. So slips are not mistakes. Slips are just tiny errors, okay? So it's not that, it's almost like a mistake that you'd make in your own language. Absolutely not going to affect the reader's understanding at all. Just a little blip rather than an error. So it's interesting that even to get the very highest grade, you are still allowed to be a little bit imperfect, but not very much. Yes, not too much at all. All right, so let's have a look and see what a band 9 might look like. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So going back to the massive importance. Someone's just asked me to make this a bit bigger, so I will. But, okay. At least we're on the same page. Okay. Let's have a look at the introduction. Well, actually, I'll read the whole thing. Here we go. The choice of language is of interest in this statement. People should follow local customs and behaviour. If this was substituted for would be wise to, there would be a statement that this essay would potentially agree with. I aim to examine why it may be beneficial to adhere to regional sensitivities, and conversely, why countries should exercise tolerance towards visitors. Nobody appreciates a rude houseguest, and this adage extends to visitors into one's own country. It is not so much a question of why specific cultural norms should be observed, but more why an individual might opt not to. Surely, part of the experience of travel is to embrace and absorb the society you are exposed to and are temporarily adopted into. Otherwise, as in the current pandemic, it may be better to stay at home and save expense on air tickets. Small, material gestures, such as learning at least some basic rudiments of the local language and what is unwise to say and in some ways behave, would mean that your experience as a traveller may be smoother. Respect garners respect, cross-culturally as in any other situation. We return, however, to the choice of people should. Who is anyone to tell another what they should say and how they should act, regardless of the geographic location? The respect that is expected of travellers could arguably be just as expected from the host country. If, as the statement suggests, it is an issue of tolerance and harmonious relations, this is the responsibility of all. Nobody owns a country. They simply inhabit it. Groups of individuals may share similar styles of dress and language within such a place, but nobody should really purport that their chosen lifestyle is superior to anyone else's. Politeness and respect should be expected and exercised by all, irrespective of borders. Fashion and language is a choice, and one where intelligent choices, which may not be personal preference, could be helpful on a superficial level. It remains, however, if real, harmonious, and tolerant living is to be enjoyed, then this goes beyond appearance and niceties. It is a choice to promote it actively by one's own conduct and conduct towards others. Okay, so don't freak out. Okay, this is a very strong band 9. I think it's really good to see what a very, very strong offering looks like. Just because you may not be able to emulate or repeat such language yourself, it's still very, very valuable to see what it can look like. All right? Okay. So let's look at it as an examiner would look at it, which we now know we'd look at the introduction and the conclusion first. I'm going to do this in blue. And I'm going to do this in blue. Well, first of all, is there an introduction and a conclusion? And the answer to that is yes. An introduction has laid out what is going to be written about. Let's have a look at how they do that. There are 3 parts to a successful introduction: consideration and reflection of the statement and the question, not in the same language, but reflecting the same meaning. Okay. You then state what the essay is going to be about, what your opinion is. And the third part is that you outline what you are going to write, because this gives an examiner something to check back that you have or you haven't done this. Okay? So in your main body text, which is the text which is black here, they will check back that you've done it in the order that you've said you're going to. So we will look at some language points that you can take away, which are very useful later. But, just looking now, you can see, the first thing they said, I aim to examine why it may be beneficial to adhere to regional sensitivities. Have they done that in this paragraph? Yes, they have. They have said why it's definitely a good thing to be submerging yourself into a different culture. Why countries should exercise tolerance towards visitors. Yeah, they've done that in this paragraph here, haven't they? Great. And they've given their own opinion at the end as part of the conclusion. And also the own opinion has been mentioned throughout the paragraphs here. So that the process and the progress is very clear. Okay. So the conclusion feeds back to the main body of the text here. Now, interestingly, what they've written about is not that different to what they've written about ineffectively to an extent with the Band 6 essay. Let's have a look at what they've written about here, They've written about language, but they've written it in a way which is on the end of another statement. Surely part of the travel experience is to embrace and absorb the society you are exposed to. Small gestures such as learning at least some basic rudiments of language, what's unwise to say, would lead to a better experience. So, yes, being able to communicate in the language that's used most where you're traveling to, that is important, isn't it? And here they've actually said, why are you traveling otherwise? Which is a good point. And there's like a little conclusion sentence here, which is good. It kind of sums up the whole paragraph. And this is a very good thing to do. You don't have to write conclusions for each paragraph, but this is kind of succinctly putting the whole point into one sentence. Respect garners respect cross-culturally as in any other situation. Okay. Now, looking here, they have gone to the other side of the arguments, which is where the host country should be respectful of the independence and independent beliefs of the people that are traveling there. What's important as well is the question itself doesn't just talk about tourism. It talks about visitors. So this level 9 essay is also saying, it's not just about people who visit, it's also about people who live in the countries as well. And they've said as well, some really interesting points here. The respect that's expected of travelers could arguably be just as expected from the host country. It's everyone's responsibility, and this is true, isn't it? It's it's true. Groups of individuals may share similar styles. So basically, they're saying that respect is all about respect. It doesn't necessarily matter which country you're from. Everyone should be tolerant to each other. And they continue here. Politeness and respect. Fashion and language is a choice. May be important. So in the conclusion here, they are going back to the first main paragraph here. It remains, however, and they're going back to here, it's a choice to promote actively by one's own conduct and conduct towards others. So it's basically saying it's everybody's responsibility. Now we have a very clear idea of what this person's opinion is. But also in the yellow and blue paragraphs here, they've really got to grips with the statements, with the question. And they've analysed it very closely and they've expanded on their ideas well, very well. Okay. So if you're very lucky in your IELTS exam, you could be asked this exact question and you would give an amazing answer, which would be extraordinary. But, If you are asked about something completely different, I think there are definitely parts of the language here that you could use to really boost your score. Little expressions like this. Highlight them in red for you. So, well, first of all, the structure of the introduction is three-part: writing about the question, a statement about what the essay is all about, and what you're going to write about in what order. Look at the language here. I aim to examine why. Conversely, oh, sorry, I'm going to do this. Why it may be beneficial to. Okay. You can write that, you can use that about anything if you're looking at two different ideas and making a conclusion about it. And this is a matching statement here. And conversely, why is a bit more sophisticated than saying, on the other hand. Yeah, same idea, but it's better English. This is also good. It's not so much a question of why, and then you've put the specific point here, but more why an individual might opt not to. Examiners love language like this because it's showing that your word ordering is quite complex. This is an interesting way of starting a paragraph. We return, however, to the previous point, main point. Use that. This is good as well. It remains, however. So it remains, however, is you emphasizing a point here. And then this goes beyond. Okay, so it's not just the structure of this essay that you can really mimic yourself with the introduction, the main body, the opinion. It's also the language, these short expressions here. These are the type of things that are going to make your mark rocket. Okay, so think about them because it's just very slick, it's very natural. And ending, a very neat way of concluding a conclusion is to use a sentence like this about a bit of general advice about what we could do to be better people, basically, almost like a recommendation. Okay, so just remember, just to summarize here, spend a lot of time. Don't spend too much time, but spend some minutes really analyzing, breaking down, understanding, and planning your response to the question, including paying attention to what type of essay you've been asked to write about. Make sure you answer the question. Introduce, not the topic, introduce the essay which is as specific as the question. Break it down into three parts: reflection of the question, what it's about, and outline what you're going to write about. Write the paragraphs in the order you've said here, cover all parts of the question, and the conclusion should not include new information, should summarize here. If you've been asked to give your own opinion, as you have, make sure it's been given throughout the essay, and then a neat recommendation at the end. Great stuff. If you do that, you'll be doing all right. Thank you very much, Roni. You're a fantastic audience. And I just want to say there is no magic formula to writing a level 9 essay. Just take it slow. Think logically, think clearly, think how you would like to read one of these essays. Okay? Because you're just appealing to an audience. It's just that your audience happens to be an IELTS examiner. Take care. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck and see you the next time. Bye-bye for now.